Today's pattern combines three of my favorite things: raglan sleeves, color blocking, and using up remnant fabrics. I've mixed and matched rib knits for the bands and a sweater knit and poly spandex I had in my stash to add color and contrast to this pattern. This raglan top is pattern number 122 from Lutterloh Supplement 308 Spring 2018. I drafted these pieces as I did in my previous Lutterloh videos, and I'll link that playlist in the description below. We're only using our bust measurement to create each pattern piece, and the only important drafting note is that the sleeve is made up of 3 separate pieces. We extract the tops of the sleeves, give them their own seam allowances, and then the sleeve bottom can also be its own piece with its separate seam allowance. I've added 1/4 inch seam allowance to each pattern piece. At the end, we will also have drafted the front and back pieces, each to be cut on the fold, and our waistband, neckband, and sleeve bands. Cut them off from fabric and we're ready to sew. Here I have both sets of top sleeves, which correspond with the front of the garment and the back of the garment. I'm just going to place a piece of tape on both of my back pieces so I don't get them confused with my front pieces moving forward. And I'll do the same to mark my back bodice piece. Now I'll place a corresponding set of top sleeves right sides together and pin that center seam. And I'll do this for both sets. And I'll sew these seams with the 1/4 inch seam allowance that I've added. Now I can place my top sleeve piece right sides together with its bottom sleeve and pin. And then I'll sew this seam with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeating for both sleeve sets. Now I can place the back side of my sleeve right sides together with the back bodice and pin in place, doing this to attach both back sleeves to the back bodice. Then I'll sew those back sleeve seams with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that I have one side of the sleeve attached, I'll open the sleeves out away from the back bodice so that I can attach the front bodice to both sides of the front sleeves. Right sides together and pinning. Now I can sew both of my front sleeve seams with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just as we did for the back. Now I'm ready to pin the underarm seams. Pinning from the bottom of the sleeve to the bottom of the garment, matching the underarm seams. Doing this for the bottoms of both sleeves and side seams. Now I'll sew both of those underarm and side seams with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here is the neckline of my bodice, and here is my neckband. Now with that neckband folded right sides together, sew together the short ends with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that the short ends are sewn, I'll fold this neckband in half lengthwise, wrong sides together, and give that a good press. Then I'll mark the 1/4 points of the neckband. And I'll also mark the 1/4 points of my neckline. Now I'll place my neckband right sides together with the neckline matching the 1/4 points, and I'll place the seam of the neckband at the back of the garment, placing them right sides together and pinning. Now I'll sew my neckband in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, slightly stretching that neckband to fit the neckline as I go, making sure not to stretch the main garment. Now that the neckband is attached, you can optionally choose to top stitch the seam allowance of the neckband all the way around, with that seam allowance pressed down toward the bodice You can top stitch right underneath your neckband with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance using a cover stitch machine, a twin needle, or a stretch stitch. Our remaining bands will be attached in the exact same way. And I'm going to place the waistband piece right sides together and sew the side seam. Once that's sewn, I'll fold it wrong sides together and give it a press. And I'll identify the quarter points of both the waistband and the bottom of the garment. Then I'll pin them right sides together, placing the seam of the band at one of the side seams. Then we can sew the waistband to the garment in the exact same way as we did for the neckband, slightly stretching that band to fit as we sew. Now the waistband is attached, and we'll repeat the exact same steps to attach both of the armbands. And now the raglan top is complete. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time.